Half-Life 2, the game that launched Steam, was released almost 10 years ago to universal critical acclaim. Even after all these years, it's easy to see why. It is a masterclass in video game pacing through design, building from an iconic opening through a series of distinctive and brilliant set pieces and encounters. It is completely linear, though rarely feels that way moment to moment. Through extended chase scenes, every turn and every doorway can feel like an improvised choice made out of desperate necessity. The Half-Life series chose to tell its relatively simple story entirely in-engine, which was a bold design decision that trusts the player to be in control at all times. As well as being a hugely influential design philosophy, it also happens to be a great fit for virtual reality, almost as if the game had been designed with the tech in mind. I really didn't get on with Half-Life 2 in VR when I originally tried it for the DK1. It can be quite a frantic game and had a tendency to make me nauseous, but since Valve released an official update enabling DK2 support, I gave it another try and found it comfortable and eminently playable. I'd have definitely replayed the whole thing with a gamepad if I hadn't have been able to get hold of some Razer Hydras to try the incredible mod version 1.4 by Wormslayer and Nathan Andrews. Earlier versions of the Half-Life 2 VR mod employed one Hydra to provide positional tracking. With the DK2 taking care of that, issues surrounding the old tracking solution have been solved, and the other controller is free to be employed for immersive gesture controls for things like reloading. There is something quite magical about decoupled looking and aiming with good motion controls. When it's working well, it significantly amplifies the immersion. I did find, however, that Hydras do need to be recalibrated quite frequently, which can definitely be a presence breaker. Thankfully, it's easy to do in-game, and soon becomes a habit that you'll do almost unconsciously, like you might regularly check that your weapon clips are full before a fight. My absolute favourite thing about the mod is the placement of the UI on your weapon and right hand. I really love glancing down and, with a twist of my wrist, as if I were checking my watch, seeing my health. Reloading often involves releasing a clip, then a motion with your left arm to load in a new one. This is really fun, but I definitely recommend trying the training simulation before you begin Half-Life 2 proper. This helps introduce all the controls in a sensible way, and since some of the reload gestures aren't necessarily obvious, it's well worthwhile. The revolver is at once a pain and a joy. You need to flick your right hand to pop out the cylinder, then raise the gun to allow the old cartridges to drop to the floor. Then you bring your left hand across to load in the new bullets, finally flicking your right wrist again to put the cylinder back in place. It can be very satisfying, but it is very easy for it to mess up, or for you to mess up, particularly in the heat of the moment. Reloading panics aside, it should be noted that even with flawless motion tracking, aiming with your arms and your eyes in 3D space is tougher than using a gamepad or a keyboard and mouse. I miss my targets, I get overwhelmed, and even on easy mode I die quite a bit. Smashing wood with the crowbar is not as reliable with the Hydra as by pressing a button, although when you do get the knack of it, it becomes quite satisfying. Aiming the crossbow through the scope is cool, but it needs a pretty high level of concentration to use as well. Motion controls do not make Half-Life 2 easier, but if you dismiss them on that basis, you are missing the point. VR and motion controls transform the experience into something new. They alter the pace of some of the moment-to-moment play without radically changing the overall pace of the experience. They make things harder, but they also make things thrilling and fun, and so much more immersive. The level of immersion you get from Half-Life 2 on the DK2 intensifies the emotions of the game, though not unmanageably so. Of course, Ravenholm is still really scary. Not quite on the level of some of the available Oculus horror games, but it's also still not for the faint of heart. Fighting dumb, faceless Combine is fine, fighting creepy, crawly, leapy headcrabs I don't do so well with. A lot of Half-Life 2 is quite frantic, but the DK2 really shines here. It's a pretty comfortable experience all in all. Features like fading to black in place of loading screens also help to maintain a comfortable experience. The main factor that stopped me from playing more than a couple hours at a time was not sim sickness, but the sweat you can work up by standing and moving in a head-mounted display.
They're looking for. Poor bastard doesn't stand a chance. Sounds like they're calling in every CP unit in City 17. Now they're flooding the areas up ahead with manhacks.
Half-Life 2 is a virtual reality treat in its slower moments as well. The in-engine narrative sections are really engaging experiences. It may be so remarkable in part just because there aren't that many Rift games available at the moment that contain a cast of speaking characters of this size. Even on a screen, having characters turn to look at you and talk to you wherever you happen to be standing can be an effective device. However, the fact that the narrative itself doesn't offer players choices beyond whether or not to pay attention and take things seriously means that a lot of people wind up just prattling around and messing about with the physics in these sections. In VR, the characters you interact with command your attention much more powerfully than on a desktop screen. It feels natural to try to hold eye contact, for example. Even mute, I feel like I can express myself a little. I give a modest bow of the head towards admiring resistance fighters as they exclaim, "Thank God you're alive."
Gordon Freeman, you're here.
Dr. Freeman? We're coming with you. If you hear Dr. Freeman, we can finally make some headway. Excuse me.
The expressive quality of head movements transforms character interaction into a space for the player to roleplay the silent protagonist. Through the lens of the DK2, Gordon Freeman's character changes or comes into clearer view. Of course, this mod, as great as it is not without its technical issues. Black smearing on true blacks plagues the darker sections of the game. There are a few bugs here and there. At one point earlier in the game I got stuck on a doorway at the start of an area, completely unable to move even after recentering. Thankfully these kinds of issues are few and far between, and the developer console commands can allow you to progress in the worst case scenarios. Overall, Nathan and Wormslayer's Half-Life 2 VR mod using a DK2 and a Razer Hydra is a revelation. The hardware, though still not perfect, allows for a comfortable and highly immersive experience. The mod has been made with creativity and care. It is easy to set up and easy to use. The training simulation is an excellent introduction to the controls. Half-Life 2 stands up so well in VR, much better than I had ever thought it would. It's really nice to see this cult classic given a new lease of life by such a superb mod, giving newer gamers a chance to experience a seminal game and older gamers an excuse to revisit. It really is the definitive way to play Half-Life 2.